Good morning, class. In today's lecture on post 315, that is theory and practice of public administration, what we shall be looking at is bureaucracy. That's study section 5. To start with, we need to provide an understanding of what bureaucracy is. So in the real sense, we shall be looking at the definitions in a succinct manner of bureaucracy. Without much ado, I want to believe that majority of this of the member of this class who will have come across the term bureaucracy before now. So in a simple terms, we can define bureaucracy as standard rule and procedures of getting work done in a formal organization. The standard rules and regulations and procedure or processes of getting work done in a formal organization. This suggests that work is not just being done without guideline. Bureaucracy focus mainly on guideline and procedures to ensure that the work is being carried out. Most of the time, bureaucracy don't give room for personal opinion or discretion. You must follow the standard rules and guideline to carry out the work being assigned to you as a bureaucrat. So going further, more often than none, bureaucracy has been used in two major ways. It has been used to describe a formal organization that follow rules, procedure, processes, guidelines to achieve its goals and objectives. In the other way, bureaucracy has also been used to describe all the negativities that have been attributed or associated with the former organizations. People will say, "Oh, don't you know that's part of the bureaucratic bottleneck? They don't want to do it. That's why they are using that term." They have different terms being used in a bureaucratic setting. KIF, keep in view. ASAP, as soon as possible. They also use some signs that are not, they can put SXX. It means certain things to them. So bureaucracy have been used by some people to describe all the negativity associated or connected with the former organization being referred to as a public sector. So you should also have it in mind that when you are talking about bureaucracy, there are also people being referred to as bureaucrats. The bureaucrats are the driving force of bureaucratic settings. They are the machinery that operate within the bureaucratic setting. So they are the workers, especially those at the top echelon. So we now want to talk about the features, the attributes of bureaucracy. Because you can't just discuss bureaucracy without understanding the tenets or the major attributes that make an organization to be called a bureaucratic setting or system. The first thing is complexity of administrative hierarchy. Complexity of administrative hierarchy. That is complex administrative hierarchy. In a standard bureaucratic setting, There are structures. There's what we call hierarchical structures. In bureaucratic setting, it's always the hierarchical structure is always flow from the top to the bottom. The authority emanated from the top echelon of authority to the least category of staff. And in all kind of bureaucratic organizations or formal settings, we have different structures. Like in police, they will start from Inspector General of Police, Deputy Inspector General of Police, Assistant Inspector General of Police, Commissioner of Police, Deputy Commissioner of Police, Assistant Commissioner of Police, Chief Superintendent, till the rank and file officers of the police force. And if you move to the civil service system, from the permanent secretary, who serve as the head of all the civil servant in that particular structure or that particular setting, to the directors, the deputy director, assistant director, chief administrative officer, assistant chief administrative officer, till the entry level, even to the point of clerical officers, the messengers, the office assistants. So you discover that there are a lot of hierarchical structure or a complex of authority. And don't forget that I said in bureaucratic setting, authority flows, order flow from the top to bottom. It never flows from bottom to up. That is the reason why some people have argued that bureaucratic system is repressive, because unless you are in management cadre or senior officer, you hardly have a voice under the bureaucratic setting. Then we also have specialization of skills and tasks. In bureaucratic setting, the work has been broken down into different segments for different category of staff to carry out. Every personnel have their own designated duty. That is why some people will be referred to as higher executive officers, administrative officers, technicians, different categories like that, clerical officers, the record officers. They have their own work. You don't, in bureaucratic setting, no matter how big is your positions, you must be assigned a duty. Your duty shouldn't be carried out by another officers, except you designated that person or you delegated that person to do it based on the authority that's conferred on you. So even at the point of entry, the qualifications, the skill will be assessed for you to be able, for the system to be able to place you accordingly to where you can perform optimally. We also have system of rule, and this is very important in bureaucratic settings, because bureaucracy is designed based on rules and regulation, based on rules and procedure, based on rule and processes, based on rule and guidelines. That is what guide the conduct. And the reason why they have disciplinary committee, when you go out of a specified role being assigned to you according to the rule of the bureaucracy, you can be given a query, either verbal query, warning, or written. You can be suspended. You can even be, your appointment can be terminated. So it is basically organized on rules and procedures. We also have separations of ownership from control. And this is why our bureaucracy is, especially at high level, is totally different from private organizations like one-man business. Because there are some private organizations that are PLC that are so complex. They have tapped into the ideology of bureaucracy. So in those settings, the ownership control is always minimal. That is why in big organizations like banking industry, they will have MD, managing director. They will have board of director. They will have CEOs, directors, different categories to the regional manager, to the branch manager. So each of these category of people are performing work that are assigned to them legally, without much without interference, or with little interference from the owners of such organization. Then we want to discuss the importance of bureaucracy. You should know that bureaucracy is the blood that sustains every government across the globe. Because it's the true bureaucracy that government policy is being executed. They are the engine room of the government. So the bureaucracy is so central, is so key to the survivability of any current government. So government use bureaucracy to implement their policy, just like I said earlier. Whatever the program any government has conceived, it is the duty of the bureaucracy and the bureaucrats to bring it to the reality. That is why the government has been structured in such a way that we have different bureaucrats that are specializes in different areas of governmental businesses. We have Ministry of Education. The bureaucrats there are there to execute government policy on education. We have Ministry of Agriculture. Their duty there is to execute the government program on agricultural activity, so on and so forth. The skill and experience required by modern day government are supplied by the bureaucrat. This is also important in the sense that it is the sole responsibility of the bureaucrat or bureaucracy to advise, to guide the government of the day. Don't forget that to be a governor of a state, you have to deal with a lot of program, a lot of issues that might even totally different from your own qualifications in terms of education or your experience over the year. You might be a graduate of let me just say you are a medical doctor, for instance. You will have to handle, as a governor, you have to handle issues that are related with agriculture, education, religion, and so on and so forth. So you rely on the bureaucrat in those specializations to guide you. You have to deal with issue of accounting, finance. You have to rely on those bureaucrats that specialize in those sectors to guide you with their experience, with their skill in terms of advice, to be able to make a solid and a robust policy program. Bureaucracy also bridges the gap between the government and the people. You may want to know why. Because it is generally believed that government cannot be everywhere at the same time. For instance, in your state, Governor Seyi Makinde cannot be at the Ministry of Finance at the same time being at the Ministry of Work and Transport, be at the Ministry of Agriculture, and so on and so forth at the same time. Even when he go there to visit, people that will be attending to the need of people in those areas are the bureaucrats. They are the one representing the government at each level. They are the one providing service delivery in those regards. They are the one providing social amenity being requested by the general populace. So they bridge the gap between the government and the people. Public bureaucrats also participate in legislation modality. And how? You may want to know. You see, as I mentioned earlier, even as a president, you are not a Mr. or Mrs. Know-it-all. The reason why you appoint people that have skill, require skills and qualification to different categories of ministry to assist you in achieving your aim. So, and those people also who have to, because where they are coming from is totally different from the organizations where they find themselves. They also need to rely on the experiences and skills of the bureaucrat in those ministries for advice, for observations, for guidance. Those advice, observation, and guidance will be collated by various ministers at different ministry and sending it back to the president that appoint them. The same as the case may be, commissioner at the state level, and sending it back to the governor that appoint them. So all this will guide the decision making process of the governor or the president on various policy and legislative bill that will be sent to the National Assembly for consideration or State House of Assembly, as the case may be. It is also involved with data collection for a purpose of decision making. So it is also the responsibility of bureaucrat or bureaucracy to maintain data, to collect data for the purpose of decision making by the government. You don't forget that we have Bureau of Statistics, Ministry of Information, and so on and so forth that help in this regard. Bureaucracy also help to execute government policy. We've mentioned that one earlier on. Or we now want to move to the concept of red tapeism. Red tapeism. This involves too much of inconsistency and unnecessary inconveniences or deliberate attempt to bypass the set rule in an organization. When we are talking about red tapeism, we're actually talking about the collectiveness of inconsistency and inconveniency or deliberate bypass of standard rule in a formal organization by the bureaucrats. Although some people will say red tapeism might be committed indeliberately, but in most developing countries of the world, especially in Nigeria, the experience have shown that most of all these inconsistencies, inconveniences, bypass of standard rule are deliberate. Though that discussion is for another day. So causes of red tapeism: undue attention and scrutiny of record, undue attention and excessive scrutiny of record. I don't know how many of you in this class have had an encounter uh, in dealing with civil servants at the ministry. Maybe you want to get something done. They have to turn you back more than 10 times. And at the end of the day, you are still doing the same things. So those are the things we are talking about. Excessive formality. And that happens almost in every public sector. You will agree with me for university system. When Vice Chancellor is around, or some principal officer within the university system, they were present on occasions. Anybody that would like to speak or raise his observations or comment will have to observe all due protocol or existing protocol by mentioning the Vice Chancellor, the Deputy Vice Chancellor, the Bursar, all those things are formality that is not actually necessary, but it's part of the red tape system. Conservation of large number of data. You see, at time, as a student, when you are carrying out a research, a quantitative research that require you to gather information or to collect data, if you are so unfortunate, you have to go to some ministry, or perhaps you need security information that will take you to police barrack or military barrack. You more often than not, you will encounter a lot of difficulty, because they will tell you some data are classified data, some information are classified informations, so therefore they can't give it out to general public. So those are part of red tape system. I want to talk about bureaucratic model. When you are talking about bureaucratic model, you are talking about those attributes or the elements that make a formal organization to be called a bureaucrat or bureaucratic setting. So in essence, bureaucratic model is defined as those conditions that make an organization to become bureaucratic and formal. We talk about feature of bureaucratic model. How do you identify a bureaucratic system or a formal organization? Sorry. You talk about division of tasks or division of labor. In any formal organizations or bureaucratic setting, the task must be broken down into different categories, and those work will be assigned to a specific qualified personnel to handle. So you don't see an engineer performing the task of a medical doctor, or a clerical officer performing the task of an administrator, or you see administrative officer performing the work of director. So the work is being broken down for different category of staff to carry out. You must see, or you also have hierarchy of authority. All these things I've discussed earlier, but I will still try to expatiate further. Hierarchy of authority, like I said, in every bureaucratic setting of formal organizations, there are different levels of authority. Even a security man is an authority on his own. He exercises certain authority at that level. To the level of permanent secretary, to the level of commissioner or minister, to the level, there's hierarchy of authority. If you are talking about ministry at the state level, you will be talking of commissioner in charge of that ministry. You talk about permanent secretary, director, deputy director, assistant director. You talk about assistant chief administrative officer, assistant chief administrative officer, assistant chief administrative officer. till the security man at the gate, to the driver. So is a large number of hierarchy of authority. Then we also talk about career orientation in bureaucratic or formal sector. Is structured in such a way that is career oriented, in which way each category of staff must be assessed based on their qualification and skill, even at the point of entry. If, for instance, someone without O-level cannot be given the work of an administrative officer, except the person enter according to his qualification, maybe with schools with primary school living certificate, and maybe he enter as a cleaner, and he rose through the rank by acquiring more qualifications, educational qualification, and he started getting promotions. So, but each category of staff will be assessed and be assigned based on their qualifications and skill with their experience. Training opportunity. Bureaucracy give room and opportunity for training and retraining, because it is assumed that every member of a formal organization must be in tune with the modern day reality. Things are evolving every time, every year. As a bureaucrat, you must also be in vogue. You must be in accordance with the reality in order to provide adequate service delivery to the client, your client, or general public, as the case may be. Probation of appointment. At the point of your appointment, in every bureaucratic setting or formal organization, you will be placed on probation, depending on organization, under the federal government system, public system. You will be probably be placed on 2-year probation. The probation period is to assess your commitment to work, to know whether you justify the confidence reposed in you in the first instance for giving you that opportunity. They want to see how well you perform before you be confirmed as a permanent staff. In some organization, private organization, it could be a year, it could be 6 months. It all depends on the organization involved. System of documentations. In bureaucratic setting of every formal sectors, they cherish documentation so much. People can be dismissed based on mismanagement of documents. So that is why some organizations will have open registry. They also have confidential registry. The open registry is a registry or record office where every member of staff can walk in and probably require for one information or the other. But the confidential registry is a record office that is meant for confidential information. No unauthorized worker or anybody can even enter there, not to talk of request or requested for any information. Discipline. This is also the heartbeat of bureaucracy. We have different level of discipline. That is why your guy, if you are working in the ministry, your immediate boss or your boss can warn you verbally, can advise you, can warn you verbally, because it's a procedural things. They don't just issue query. They will start from the first stage of word of advice, verbal warning, first query, second query, then third query, maybe suspension, interdiction, dismissal, resignation, or different kind of terms on and go on, so on and so forth. So because in bureaucratic setting there are rules, there are procedure, there are guidelines. If they mistakenly disengage you or fire you from your work without following all this process, you can go to industrial court or any court of law to challenge the organizations, and you may eventually win, and win big with huge money as a compensation. So we want to also talk about the disadvantage of bureaucratic model. We just finished talking about the advantages. We want to talk about disadvantage. It leads to strict rudimentations. Strict rudimentation in the sense that you have to follow rules and regulations. You have to follow guidelines. You have to follow processes. And that deny bureaucrat or the worker to use their discretion. So a situation where you ought to have used your discretion, and that will have saved time and energy, you have to follow the procedure, and the procedure might take longer than necessary. It is also demoralizing, especially for the junior workers, in the sense that more often than not, junior workers are always at the receiving end when you are talking about formal organizations, because they hardly have a say. You obey the last order. It's not only the military that obey the last order, because even in the public bureaucratic setting, there's what they call insubordination. You can be given a query based on insubordination. If you question the authority in an appropriate way, or in a way that does not go well with your boss, you can be issued a query. So it silence the junior staff. It is repressive because of the command of structure or communication chain in bureaucratic setting. It is repressive in terms of command structure, or what we can also call communication chain in bureaucratic settings. Because for instance, there are some organizations in which, even if you have the most brilliant idea that your immediate boss is trying to suppress, or he didn't want the organization to benefit from your idea or your observations, and you are willing and so much interested in passing your knowledge, your idea across to the management, the procedure requires you to write through your immediate boss. That is why they will say, attention, permanent secretary, through HOD of so. So in the long run, what your boss is actually preventing you to do, presenting your case to him, will further implicate you, because you know your immediate boss his intention is not, or his interest is not in that line, and you are pushing that particular agenda. You have to write through him. You know, you might not want to do so. By not doing so, the system it has repressed you. It has repressed your opinion, and also deprived themselves of what they can benefit from your own idea and experience. It is also costly because of the massive number of workers. It is costly. It encourages corruption, especially in most developing countries of the world, because of the complicated bureaucratic structure put in place. You will agree with me that even before any minister can embezzle ministry fund, he or she must enjoy the support of the top bureaucrat in that ministry, especially maybe the permanent secretary, the director of finance and supply, and some other key staffer of that particular organization. So that is why corruption is so embedded, so widespread in developing countries, especially in their bureaucratic setting. I want to stop here. I wish you all the best as you continue enjoying this lecture. Have a nice day.